Number 1.
Lucy Johnson was born Lucy in Carvale on October 14, 1935 in Skagway, Alaska. She lived in the cities of Bennett and Pennington for a while, before moving to the Yukon community of Carcross in 1943. In 1953, she left Carcross and didn't really talk to her family much after that. In 1954, Lucy married Malvin Johnson. Shortly after getting married, the couple settled in Surrey in British Columbia, Canada. Lucy worked at a hospital for a while that year, but I couldn't find any more information about employment for her. Malvin worked on a tugboat for a while, but I don't know how long that lasted. The couple soon welcomed 2 children, daughter Linda and son Daniel. Malvin reportedly had a temper and liked to drink. Linda would later say she didn't remember her father ever being violent, but that he was apparently physically abusive toward her mom. I know those details are kind of vague, but they might be important later. Lucy was last seen by a neighbor in September 1961, but not reported missing by Malvin until May 14, 1965. When police learned from a neighbor that Lucy hadn't been seen in years, they confronted Malvin, who admitted he hadn't seen his wife since 1961 either. At first, police suspected foul play. After neighbors reported seeing Malvin digging in his backyard, reportedly for a septic tank, they searched the backyard. However, they didn't find anything, and were never able to gather enough evidence to charge Malvin with a crime. At some point, they took DNA from the couple's children and periodically compared it to unidentified bodies, but there were never any matches. After his wife's disappearance, Malvin was reluctant to talk about her. He eventually remarried, and after the marriage, Linda and Daniel weren't allowed to talk about their mother at all. Sadly, Daniel drowned in his late teens. Linda, who had been about 7 when her mother disappeared, went on to marry and have 5 children and 10 grandchildren. She eventually came to believe that her mother was dead. By 2013, the disappearance of Lucy and Johnson was one of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police's oldest cold cases. On July 2, 2013, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, featured Lucy's case on their Missing of the Month series, with hopes of getting new information. After this, Linda, now in her 50s, decided to take action on her own. Because she knew her mother was from Alaska, she took out an ad in the Yukon News. The ad included Lucy's name as well as her birth date, place of birth, and the names of her parents, Linda's grandparents. Linda also gave her email address in the ad. And it didn't take long for something to come of this. Just a couple of weeks later, a woman in Whitehorse in the Yukon got a call from her brother at work. Rhonda Glenn was told by her brother, Howard, that he'd seen an interesting ad in the paper. The woman who'd placed the ad was looking for her mother, who had the same name as their mother. At first, Rhonda assumed this woman must have been adopted, and Lucy was her biological mother. She called Lucy and Johnson, who was now 77, and told her she'd seen a missing persons report for her in the paper. Lucy replied, "I'm not missing. I'm here." Rhonda also contacted Linda, and once she realized they were involved, she called the RCMP on July 16. Lucy and Johnson was alive and well. She'd stayed in British Columbia until about 1980, before moving to the Yukon, where she was found in 2013. She had remarried and had 4 more children, and claimed she'd never really been purposefully hiding. After she was found, her former husband, Malvin, who had died in the 1990s, was officially cleared of all charges in her disappearance. But now that her mom had been found, Linda had to deal with the aftermath. She claimed to have no hard feelings toward her mom, but hoped she would want to be part of her life and get to know the grandchildren she'd never met. On July 18, she told the Surrey Now leader, "I have a lot of questions and they're all wise. And I just hope I can be part of her life." Later that month, Linda got to talk to her mother on the phone for the first time in decades. At first, it was awkward. Linda didn't know what to say, and Lucy still seemed to be in shock at the situation. But ultimately, Linda claimed the conversation went great. In September 2013, Linda flew to Whitehorse to visit Lucy and her family. She later claimed Lucy recognized her right away, because she looked so much like her half-sister Rhonda. But parts of the visit were unpleasant. While there, Linda asked her mom point-blank why she left. Lucy claimed Malvin was abusive and cheated on her frequently. She left and tried to take her kids, but Malvin refused to let her. As Linda would put it, she said that he told her to get out, and she went back to get us, but my dad said, "You're not taking the kids," and that was the end of that. She never tried again after that. Rhonda said she also got the impression Lucy left because of domestic violence, but Lucy never talked about it much. During the visit, Linda also had to break the news to Lucy that her oldest son, Daniel, had died. Sheila Reynolds of the Surrey Leader reports that Johnson's daughter, Linda Evans, discovered that her mother currently lives in the Yukon Territory in northwestern Canada, 1,000 miles from their former home in Surrey, British Columbia. Johnson is reportedly alive and well. Now 77, she has 4 other children, 3 sons and a daughter.
Number 2.
45-year-old John Glasgow was last seen in Little Rock, Arkansas, on January 28, 2008. He disappeared after driving away from his home in the early morning hours for work. John William Glasgow was born in Nashville, Tennessee, to parents Fern Carol Rozek and Thomas Cortland Glasgow. He was the youngest of 5 siblings. Glasgow attended Nashville High School and graduated from University of Central Arkansas with a Master of Business Administration degree in 1985. He was also licensed as a certified public accountant. In 1990, Glasgow was hired by CDI Contractors LLC of Little Rock, an Arkansas-based firm providing construction services across the United States. In 1995, Glasgow was promoted to Chief Financial Officer. In the summer of 1992, Glasgow married former high school classmate Melinda Glasgow. The couple lived in a house on South Lookout Street in Little Rock, Arkansas. On January 26 and 27, 2008, Glasgow spent much of the weekend at the CDI Contractors LLC office at 3000 Cantrell Road. On Sunday evening, he accompanied his wife for a dinner party across the street hosted by his older brother. When the party ended, the couple returned home, and John fell asleep in front of the television while his wife went to bed upstairs. On the morning of January 28, 2008, Glasgow was seen driving away from his home by a neighbor around 5:15 a.m., toward Point Circle, likely in the direction of work. John Glasgow never made it to his company office that morning, and has not been heard from since. Around 2:30 p.m., Glasgow's wife was contacted by one of his co-workers saying that he failed to show up for work that morning and could not be reached on his cell phone. Sensing something was wrong, she contacted John's brother, requesting him to meet at their home. They made calls to their friends and family, hoping someone had heard from him. A next-door neighbor reported seeing him leaving for work at 5:15 a.m., but that seemed odd since it was too early for him to be leaving for work. At 5:54 p.m., his wife Melinda filed a missing persons report to the Little Rock Police Department. When police arrived at their home, Melinda pointed out a notepad where John had written their bank account number and lock combination. Nothing was found missing from the safe. On January 29, 2008, Glasgow's gray Volvo SUV was found parked in the parking lot in front of Mather Lodge in Petit Jean State Park in Conway County, about an hour's drive from his home. A Tennessee tourist captured a photo proving that the vehicle was there as early as 4:30 p.m. the previous day. The car was unlocked with his laptop computer, company-issued cell phone, and credit cards inside. The Petit Jean State Park rescue team began a 5-day search for John, and his vehicle was taken by police to process for further evidence. No further evidence pointing to John's whereabouts were found. His bank account and cell phone records showed no activity on the day of his disappearance. His passport was left in his personal safe at home. At the time of his disappearance, Glasgow was said to be in a strained relationship with executives of Dillard's Inc., half owner of CDI Contractors. Along with other CDI executives, he was in negotiations to purchase half of the company, which became available after the death of the company's co-founder. On April 13, 2011, John Glasgow was legally declared dead by a Pulaski County Circuit Court judge. In 2011, 43-year-old twice-convicted felon Jonathan Bronner told his lawyer and the Little Rock Police Department that he knew the location where Glasgow's body was buried. Bronner was serving time at Faulkner County Jail for the attempted kidnapping of a Conway County businessman in July 2009 and for stalking his ex-wife in October 2010. Bronner told police that he had been recruited by thugs from Malvin to whom he owed money to help bury the body of Glasgow in a bean field near England in Lonoke County. Despite extensive searches at the bean field Bronner pinpointed as the burial site, no sign of Glasgow was found. Police believe that Bronner tried to use his alleged involvement in the Glasgow case in hopes of bargaining for a reduced sentence. Missing man's body found in Petit Jean Mountain, Arkansas. On March 11, 2015, 7 years after John disappeared, skeletal remains were discovered by 2 hikers at the base of a cliff about 150 yards off Red Bluff Drive in Petit Jean Mountain, Arkansas. The remains were found within a mile of where John's vehicle was last seen parked, along with a wallet containing a driver's license and credit card. On March 12, 2015, the human remains were positively identified through dental records as belonging to John Glasgow by the Arkansas State Crime Lab. Examiners found no evidence of trauma to the skull, nor did they find a firearm. The cause of death could not be determined. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of John Glasgow, please contact the Little Rock Police Department at 501-371-4829.
Number 3.
A 42-year mystery was solved 2016, when police tracked down a long-missing Indiana mom in Texas, where she had been living under an alias. Lula Gillespie-Miller, now 69, admitted in an interview with the Texas Rangers that in 1974, she left her family in the town of Laurel and disappeared, the Indiana State Police said in a statement. But because she did not commit a crime, police have agreed not to divulge the name Gillespie-Miller was using or identify the small South Texas town where she now lives. Gillespie-Miller did, however, allow the Indiana detective, who hunted her down, to pass on her contact information to her daughter, Tammy. Thanks to the hard work of Indiana State Police Detective Sergeant Scott Jarvis, this Easter weekend, Tammy Miller hopes to make contact with the mother she has never known, the statement read. President Nixon was bogged down by the Watergate scandal. The Swedish pop group ABBA scored a hit with Waterloo, and an unknown writer named Stephen King had just published his first novel, Carrie, when Gillespie-Miller took off after giving birth to her 3rd child. She was 28. The runaway mom felt she was too young to be a mother at the time, and signed her children over to her parents, the police statement read. Other than a 1975 letter postmarked Richmond, Indiana, Gillespie-Miller's kin had no contact with her. But they never stopped hoping that one day they would find her again. In 2014, the Doe Network reached out to Indiana State Police Detective Sergeant Scott Jarvis, who had taken over the case in an attempt to help solve it. Jarvis's investigations led him to find out about a woman who matched the description of Gillespie-Miller, who resided in Tennessee in the 1980s and later moved to Texas. With this information, Jarvis expected that Gillespie-Miller must be living under an alias and possibly still lived in Texas. True to his assumptions, Gillespie-Miller was living under an alias in Texas, and was found by police 42 years after she had been declared missing. Since she hadn't committed any crimes, the police didn't disclose the name she is living under, but they gave her daughter her contact information for a reunion of sorts.
Number 4.
Lula Cora Hood went missing back in 1970, and her family thought she was dead at some point, since they even held a memorial service and tried to move on. Before she left, she was the mother of 4, 2 girls and 2 boys, but owing to her inability to take care of her children, she let her sister adopt them, and she visited them often. However, Lula and her sister had a quarrel, and she was told to leave, and she did and never looked back. But 15 years after a body found in an Illinois brickyard was thought to be hers, renewed police work, and the internet tracked a very much alive 84-year-old Lula Cora Hood 1,100 miles away in Jacksonville. Kvisto got the news June 30th from a Knox County Sheriff's Office sergeant, who personally came to her North Henderson, Illinois home. "I started crying," Kvisto said. "As a kid, all you see is that your mother left. Then you realize it was because she couldn't take care of us. So I was excited and I cried. I never would have thought I would have that reaction, but I sure did." Hood has dealt with mental health issues, so police and family didn't want reporters to contact her just yet, because it might overwhelm her emotionally. But finding her was a satisfying feeling for Sergeant Jason Landers, after he called a Jacksonville telephone number, and the woman at the other end had the correct answers to his questions. "When I said I was from Knox County, she said she knew where that was, and gave me the names of 2 of her sisters and a daughter," Landers said. "I feel good for her family." Hood was a single mother who realized she couldn't take care of Kvisto and sister Joanne and brothers Owen and David. So she allowed her sister Hazel to adopt them, and visited them until Kvisto was 15 and that family squabble. "I was too young to know what it was about, but she was told to leave, and that is exactly what she did," Kvisto remembered. "She never came back. The family searched but never found her. When a skeleton was found in 1996 in an abandoned brickyard in East Galesburg, Illinois, police and the family thought it might be her. The reason it all made sense was that she was 4'10" and the bones laid out were the same height," Kvisto said. The brickyard also was across from where Hood's parents lived. A memorial service was held, but police kept the remains until full confirmation could be made when DNA testing improved. In 2008, 2 family members gave DNA samples for a comparison. Test results released in June showed the remains weren't Hood, and a cold case turned hot. "We didn't have any choice," Landers said. "We had to reopen it." Landers got more information from the family and checked cities where Hood had connections, like Jacksonville, because her daughter Joanne was born there. Internet searches with her first and middle name and birth date led to a Jacksonville woman with a different last name. When Landers called the Social Security number, she gave matched Hood's from 70 years ago. Jacksonville Sheriff's Office missing person detective Frank Lockley also talked with Hood, confirming her maiden name to Landers. Kvisto said she's called her mother a lot since June 30th, and they talk like old friends, but Hood remembers her sisters and where she was born, but not other things. "When I ask her if she remembers me, she says no," Kvisto said. "But I remembered she loved to cross-stitch and always had a needle in her hand, and she said, I still do that." Kvisto plans a reunion in a few weeks. She has heard her mother had 14 children and hopes more of her step-siblings can be found. There is sad news: sons David and Owen are dead. But the family wants Hood back in Illinois if she wants to. "She doesn't have that many years left, so if we can make up for lost time, why not?" she said. For the Knox County sergeant, there's still a mystery left. "It's only half the case solved," Landers said. "We still have to know who the bones belong to."
Number 5.
Police say a man who's been missing for over 30 years was found living under an alias and working as a bookie in a Las Vegas casino. Arthur Gerald Jones, now 72, was arrested Tuesday on 4 felony counts related to identity theft and fraud after a report that he fraudulently used a Social Security number led to an investigation. Court records paint a picture of Arthur Gerald Jones as a former Chicago commodities broker who was tormented by snowballing gambling debts and a troubled marriage when he left home to run an errand in the spring of 1979 and never returned. FBI agents investigated his disappearance, focusing on a possible mafia connection, but never solved the case, and an Illinois court declared the husband and father of 3 dead in 1986. Jones' wife, Joanne Esplin, and children received $47,000 in survivor benefits from Social Security. The 72-year-old told investigators, according to a criminal complaint, that he needed a fresh start and never spoke to his family and friends in Illinois after his disappearance. Authorities say Jones has spent the past 10 years working as a bookie under the name Joseph Richard Sandelli. Before disappearing, Jones paid a friend in Chicago $800 for fake documents and a social security number belonging to another man, authorities said. Jones' lawyer, Stephen Stein, says the Nevada Attorney General is offering his client a plea deal that would allow him to plead guilty to just one of the charges and face probation. Jones posted $20,000 bail Thursday and has not discussed the plea deal with Stein. Stein said his client has friends in Las Vegas who consider him family and who sprang to his defense after the arrest. Although his jail time was suspended, he had to pay the fine. What made authorities catch up with him was when he applied for a driver's license. By the time the police got to him, he had worked in the casino for a decade. Jones left his family in 1979 voluntarily, citing unemployment, a troubled marriage, and a desire to begin a new life as the main reasons for leaving. Earlier on, the police had thought someone had killed him, owing to the debts he had since he had a gambling problem.